All right, here we go with more Allan Stratton's The Dogs. This is chapter 25. Who knew old newspapers could be so interesting? Wow. I'd give anything to talk to Cody's great-grandmother, but she's in the nursing home. How can I get to see her without getting into trouble? Speaking of trouble, what time is it? I dig into my knapsack and check my phone. 2 o'clock. I'm dead. Mom's left a dozen texts, too. 12:15. What's keeping you? 12:30. Where are you? 12:35. Call me. 12:45. You're not at the rec center. 1 o'clock. You're in big trouble, mister. 1:05. Please, Cameron, call. I'm worried. No way I can just text. I race outside and phone her. Cameron, I know. I was in the library. I had to turn my phone off. I got distracted. Sorry. I'm really sorry. Library? What happened to the rec center? I was doing research. I lost track of time. I'm sorry I ruined your lunch. You think I can eat? I was worried sick. You're still at the library? Yeah, I'll be right there. The Naughty Pine Inn is an upscale greasy spoon. It basically serves eggs for breakfast and burgers and specials for lunch and dinner. But it has checkered cotton tablecloths and menus with leatherette covers. Mom and I sit halfway back in the booth with red vinyl seat cushions and a fairly clean ketchup squirt bottle. I know Mom's trying to be positive because she still hasn't yelled at me. All the same, she's way too quiet for comfort. In fact, she hasn't said anything. Just listened to my non-stop apologizing. Mom orders the chicken salad sandwich special, which comes with fries and a Coke. I order a cheeseburger and onion rings. As per usual, she gives me her Coke and half her fries. So, she says, after the waitress has left, what were you researching at the library? I had to look some stuff up for my history essay. Mom has a sip of water and puts the glass back in the exact water ring it came from. She's no good at acting casual. I know you're interested in the ownership of the farm, she says carefully. You weren't researching the Sinclairs, were you? Not exactly. What do you mean, not exactly? I twist my water glass back and forth between my thumb and fingers. The Sinclairs come up in some of the articles, but sort of by accident. Mom doesn't buy it. Mr. Sinclair is our landlord. How he happens to have the farm is none of our business. She looks at me like I'm supposed to say sorry again. I don't. You were planning on you weren't planning on putting any of that in your essay, were you? No. Cameron, promise me you won't say or write anything about Mr. Sinclair, she says and starts in on her character speech, which manages to include why I mustn't rat out the Sinclairs and also why I need to be where I say I'll be. It's full of words like trust, respect, privacy, loyalty, integrity, and responsibility, but mainly what I hear is blah, blah, blah. Which is fine by me, because as long as I remember to nod and look serious, I can disappear in my head and think about more important stuff, like whether to believe Police Chief Cole or Cody's great-grandmother about the murders. Chief Cole was probably right. Matthew Fraser told his employer he was leaving town, and since Mrs. McTavish was running out on a violent marriage, she had reasons not to say where she and her kid were going. Besides, Cody's great-grandmother looked nuts. Not so fast. Whacking a cop is pretty out there, but if I thought someone I loved was murdered, wouldn't I do whatever it took to get the truth? Wouldn't I look crazy too? Yeah, but what about Mrs. McTavish's letter about leaving with Jackie? What about it? Mr. McTavish could have forced her to write it. He could have said he'd kill her if she didn't. Wouldn't she guess he'd kill her anyway? If I had a gun to my head, I'd do whatever and play for time. Besides, maybe he beat her till she wrote it or threatened to kill Jackie too. If Dad threatened to kill me, Mom would do anything. Okay, so she writes it, and when Matthew Fraser comes for her and Jackie, Mr. McTavish kills all three of them. Right, then he waits till night and drives Mr. Fraser's car to Ramsey, where he abandons it near the bus station, mails the letter, and walks home. He'd be back before sunrise, and when the car gets discovered, well, it's a 48 junker. Everyone thinks they ditched it and disappeared on a bus. But Mr. McTavish would still be stuck with the bodies. If he'd moved them off the farm, they'd likely have been found by now. But the cops searched the property and said the ground was undisturbed. Plus, it was March. The earth was probably still frozen. So where did he put them? And what about Jackie? He says his mother left without him, and that Artie saw him after she'd gone. Okay, maybe his father just murdered his mom and Mr. Fraser and let him live. But if Jackie was alive, wasn't he found after the dogs killed his father? Even if the dogs got Jackie later, there'd have been bones, wouldn't there? That Davy Crockett cap, at least? Cameron, Mom says. Who are you talking to? What? The waitress put our meals on the table. There we are, then. Enjoy. Thank you, Mom says without taking her eyes off me. The waitress disappears. I was talking to you, Cameron, Mom continues, controlled, intense. Suddenly your lips began moving like we discussed the other night. Where were you? Who were you talking to? No one. I was here. I was listening. You were talking about integrity and responsibility. What else? Punctuality? Mom looks at me like she's a teacher and I've just failed a test, and she's very disappointed. You were talking to Mr. Sinclair, weren't you? No. You were asking him about how he got the farm. It wasn't about him at all. Then what? You'll flip out. I won't. She will. Promise? Promise. Mom presses her hands on the table so that she can concentrate on not being upset. Okay, but remember what you said about trust. I take a deep breath. You know that kid who hit me? You were having a conversation with him? No, his great-grandmother thinks that the man who used to have our farm, the man who got killed by his dogs, she thinks he murdered his wife, his kid, and his wife's boyfriend. I was asking myself stuff like whether he made his wife write a letter before he killed her and where he buried the bodies. Mom stares at me like I'm an alien. You promised you wouldn't flip out. I'm not flipping out. Mom presses her fingers into the table so hard her nails turn white. But you do know this is unhealthy, don't you? You mean sick. All right, sick. You take some old story and instead of laughing it off, the normal thing to do, you act as if it's real, imagining violence and horror instead of enjoying a pleasant lunch in the here and now. It's disturbing, Cameron. I bang my hand on the table. See, this is why I never tell you stuff. You promise you won't freak out, and then you do. It's not my fault I picture things or talk to myself. If I try to keep all the stuff inside my head, I'll explode. Cameron, Mom says quietly, please keep your voice down. The woman 2 tables behind you is staring. I turn around. Hey, was I talking to you? The woman cowers into her coffee like I'm going to attack her with a spoon or something. I'm sorry, he didn't mean that, Mom says to the woman and zeroes back in on me. Cameron, we need to have a serious conversation, but not here, not now. Finish your burger. I have to get back to the office. I'll see you at 5. Don't be late. Chapter 26. I'm at the office at 10 to 5. Mom finishes up. We say goodbye to Ken and head back home. I tell her I'm sorry about the restaurant stuff, especially being so rude to that woman. And she says good, but don't let it happen again. Then she smiles and tells me she's pleased I was researching my essay. That shows real initiative. Only next time keep your eye on the clock. I smile and nod and say whatever, but mostly I try not to think about the cemetery. I keep seeing the dog appear out of the mist and wondering about Jackie's dark secret hiding place. It's like that for the rest of the day, but that's better than what happens when I go to sleep. Tonight's nightmare is especially real. I dream I wake up and someone's in my room. Who's there? Shh, it's okay, buddy. It's only me. Dad. I sit bolt upright. Dad, what are you doing here? I live here. Does Mom know? Your mother's gone. Gone where? Guess. Silence except for the sound of him breathing. I have a surprise for you. What kind of surprise? You'll see. Dad's voice is in the hall. Follow me, Jackie. I'm not Jackie. I'm Cameron. Whatever you say, son. There's a candle on my bedside table. I light it. Shadows dart around the room. None of the things here are mine. There are drawings of dogs taped to the walls and ceiling. Something tickles my left ear, the tail of the raccoon skin cap I'm wearing. This way, Dad calls. I take the candle into the hallway. It's long and dark. This way. Don't be frightened, buddy. I won't hurt you. I follow Dad's voice down the hall for what seems like forever. At last, I get to the door of the big room over the kitchen and step inside. It's empty. The trapdoor to the attic is open. There's a ladder. I'm up here, buddy. I climb up into the darkness, holding the candle in one hand, steadying myself with the other. As I near the top, Dad reaches down and grabs me under the armpits. He hoists me into the attic and swings me around and around. My candle goes out. Is this fun, buddy? Dad, stop it. He sets me down. A kerosene lamp flares up. He's holding it in his hand. Only he's not Dad. He's Mr. McTavish. Surprise! I scream. Your mother didn't leave you after all, Mr. McTavish grins. Cameron. It's Mom. Her voice is coming from behind me. I whirl around. Only instead of Mom, I see Mrs. McTavish. She's taped up in plastic, hanging by her neck from a rafter. Cameron! I scream again because there's another body, a man's, hanging next to her. Cameron, wake up! All of a sudden, I'm in my bed. The lights are on. Mom's shaking me. Wake up, Cameron. Wake up. Mom! I hold her tight. Cameron, she strokes my hair. What on earth were you dreaming? I can't remember. That's a lie. I do, only I can't say. The truth is too scary. What I dreamed was more than a dream. It was a message from Jackie. He was showing me his hiding place and how he and the others got there. Chapter 27. By morning, things are clearer than ever. Mr. McTavish found out his wife was about to leave him for Matthew Fraser. He waited till Jackie was at school. Then he made her write the letter saying she'd run off with Mr. Fraser and Jackie. After he wrote it, he killed her. When Mr. Fraser came by, Mr. McTavish killed him too. He hid the car in the barn, taped the bodies in plastic, and hung them in the attic. When Jackie got home, his father told him his mother had left. From now on, he said, Jackie wasn't to leave the farm or see anyone, or something bad would happen. Jackie was so scared of his father, he did what he was told. That night, Mr. McTavish drove Mr. Fraser's car to Ramsey, mailed the letter, and was back home by sunrise. 2 weeks later, Cody's great-grandmother went bananas. The cops came to shut her up. They didn't really investigate because they thought everything was normal. Mr. Fraser had told his boss he was leaving town, and Mr. McTavish had his wife's letter. But Cody's great-grandmother didn't let up. Mr. McTavish got guard dogs to keep her away. But by then he must have realized Jackie wouldn't stay hidden forever. After all, Jackie's friend Artie lived just one farm over, and kids get nosy. Once Jackie was found, the truth would come out, so he called Jackie up to the attic where he killed him too. Seeing his mother and Mr. Fraser's bodies, that's the part Jackie won't talk about, the part he tries to block from his mind. Anyway, now Mr. McTavish has 3 bodies taped up in the attic, Jackie's dark secret hiding place where no one can see. He seals the trapdoor with nails and paint. That and the tape and plastic hide that's the smell of the corpses. Not that he has to worry. He's always been a loner. Even his best friends, the Sinclairs, think he's strange. And with the guard dogs, nobody comes by. Everything's perfect. Mr. McTavish has gotten away with it. But then, one day, the dogs kill him when he opens the door to go outside. By the time he's discovered, the people figure any smells from what's left of him. The Sinclairs lock up the house and the farm and the land. By the time Mr. Sinclair moves in, it's 10 years later and the bodies have all dried up. And that's that, until I saw Jackie. But who'll believe me? I could take a hammer and break into the attic to find the bodies, only what if I'm wrong? Mom already thinks I'm crazy. Maybe she'd put me in a mental home. For my own good. But I like what happened to Cody's great-grandmother. No, before I say anything, I have to be surer than sure. And there's a way. The man hanging beside Mr. McTavish in my dream had a broad forehead, a lean jaw, a dark brush cut, and clear blue eyes bugged with wide terror. There were no photographs of Matthew Fraser in the Bugle. The only place I've seen him is in my dream. So that's what he looked like. My dream was true. So if that's what he looked like, my dream was true. And how to find out? By talking to Hannah Murphy, Cody's great-grandmother. That's how. Even when the old people forget new stuff, they're supposed to remember things from long ago. Mrs. Murphy was very close to her cousin. She'd remember what he looked like for sure. But how do I ask her? After all, it's not like I can just barge into her room in the nursing home. Suddenly I have the answer. Benji. Monday morning, Cody and his friends bark at me when I get on the bus, but they don't do much else. Even Cody's too smart to try and start something right after a suspension. When Benji gets on, he asks me how I spent my time off, and I tell him it was great, non-stop TV and video games. Then I ask about his weekend, knowing he'll go on about spending another Sunday with his grandpa at the nursing home. Sure enough, I don't want to sound harsh, but it was so boring and my church pants itched like crazy. I nod and exhale solemnly. That first time I sigh, Benji doesn't notice, so I sigh and again, till you'd think I was trying for an Oscar for best ever performance of being upset. What? He asks. I suck in my breath like I'm hurting inside, but being brave about it. Mom thinks my grandpa can't take care of himself anymore. I lie. She's been talking about moving him here and getting him put in that home. Only the way you make it sound. Gee, sorry, don't worry. It's a nice place, really. I shrug all gloomy and look at my shoes. That's easy for you to say. Seriously, check it out. How? Are you a dummy or what? Like I told you, I go after school on Wednesdays too and meet up with Dad when he finishes work. If you want, I could bring you with me, show you around. You could get your mom to drive you home after. Really? You do that? You bring me with you? Sure, no problem. Mrs. Murphy, here I come.